Hello everybody, it's Wyron here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the map Excavation Site, once again playing against Chaos, against the forces of the Tomb Kings this time around. So definitely on a bit of a Chaos versus Corpses sort of kick. Now this time around we're running a very similar build to the last one. I actually think this is generally the way to go against Chaos. Or sorry, not against Chaos, against the Tomb Kings if you're playing against Chaos. So for my Lord, Kholek once again. Kholek's just very good. 100 armor, massive HP pool, 25% missile resist. In this case I didn't bring Star Crusher, just brought Lord of the Storm and Standard Die. I wasn't too pleased with Star Crusher last time. I think it's got its issues. He's backed by 2 Dragon Shaggoths though, providing some anti-large. Obviously constructs are pretty good against Chaos, causing fear, terror amongst their troops, tearing up your infantry, and honestly even dueling your lords, because obviously the Necrosphinxes and those sorts of units are the counter to large for the Tomb Kings, by and large. So we've got that sort of pack there. They are, of course, on top of their 3 chosen halberds, who are going to basically take on anything the Tomb Kings can put up against them. Tomb Guard can't really take on them. Skeleton Spears, obviously, are not going to be taking on them. My opponent here doesn't have the Scorpion Legion, so I don't have to worry about poison on the back line there either. So definitely nice. For my caster, I decided to bring Chaos Sorcerer of Shadows. You can see, if we look at his equipment, he does have Forbidden's Rod. He does have Occam's Mind Razor, which I think is a decent choice. Magic damage, and more specifically the extra weapon damage and armor piercing damage is in my opinion very good. He does have Penumbral Pendulum to help clear out mobs potentially, and Feebling Foe to debuff specific targets to help the Shaggoths snipe lords or hero or monsters, and then Malkoth's Mystify Miasma just to slow targets down. A single unit of Direwolves, or Chaos Warhounds, sorry, with poison on the flank here is there, in case my opponent had brought, say, Chosen of the Gods, or Ushati Great Bows, or Skeleton Archers, or Skeleton Horseman Archers. I wanted something to interdict that and shut that down, and give my Shaggoths the opportunity to close the distance. For my opponent, a bit of an interesting build. The front line composed of Tomb Guards, so very elite, backed by some Skeleton Spears, and the core here is, of course, Cetra the Imperishable, as well as the Sphinx of Usef. And the Sphinx of Usef, it's a little difficult to tell. I'm not entirely sure what's buffing it right now. It's getting a buff from something, so Unyielding Will, as well as the Crown of Neakara. So that's one of the AoEs from Cetra. So you can see it's getting a huge buff to its damage and its stats. It's up to 5765. That's actually better than Kholek. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure the Sphinx of Usef beats Kholek in a straight up fight, which is definitely a little rough. But regardless, I do have that extra benefit of the Shaggoths, and of course, Cetra himself is not anti-large, he's anti-infantry. He doesn't have such great weapon strength, his melee attack and melee defense is much more pitiful, so other than his HP pool, he doesn't have much going for him. And then on the flank, my opponent does have 2 Necropolis Knights with halberds, so a bit of an interesting anti-large pick. These guys have comparable stats to Demigryph halberds, but in my opinion, they're not really that good. They do struggle with, they're decent, they're cheap. They've got a pretty good HP pool, but they do apply poison, but they do struggle with they still struggle with the cavalry issues of getting into a good position against single entities, getting a surround, and they do struggle with the fact that they are kind of prone to getting surrounded themselves because they're a very small unit size. Regardless, you can see I skirt around them here with the Chaos Warhounds with poison and dive straight in against good old Cetra. My opponent counters with Usef's Incantation of Desiccation, hitting me with a bunch of debuffs, nuking down my melee attack. So definitely some rough stuff. But the plan here actually wasn't so much to really force a fight with Cetra. You can see these Tomb Guard got completely smushed, just being run over. It's actually crazy how much impact damage these guys do. But the plan was actually to bait out the Sphinx of Usef, and that has worked out actually rather well. So I do make a mistake here in not waiting out the Incantation of Desiccation, but nonetheless, I do hit the Sphinx of Usef with the Enfeebling Foe and immediately start whomping on it. So you can see it's dropping HP rather quickly against the 3 Shaggoths. Unfortunately, getting the Shaggoths into position against it is tough because of all these skeletons in the way, which keep resetting my attack. What I should have done is gotten Kholek and a Shaggoth on top of it and had the other Shaggoth whomp on Cetra, because honestly, these guys are not able to get us around. They're struggling to get in position, and they keep getting distracted by this chaff. And in the meantime, I'm actually sneaking the Hounds around, and you might be wondering why I'm going for the Sphinx with them. But one, I want to start resetting its attack. Right now, my opponent doesn't have anything distracting the Sphinx, so it's targeting doesn't keep getting reset. It's staying on Kholek, and that's really frustrating. So the Hounds will help interfere with that. The Hounds will also apply poison, and nuking the Sphinx's stats down with poison by about 20% on the melee attack would be melee damage would be very nice. Now heal does go down, and you can see the Sphinx of Usef getting absolutely pasted there with the infielding foe, of course, crippling it rather badly. But my opponent does pop Nair's Incantation, Desiccation, just as I pop Oakland's Mind Racer, so all of these guys are getting a massive boost. You can see Kholek over 700 weapon strength. They are womping on Cetra, they're womping on the Sphinx here. And my opponent doesn't have the healing. He didn't bring a Necrotect, he didn't bring Arcan, so he's in a rough spot. You can see the Hounds poisoning the Sphinx, making it much weaker. It is trying to hit the Hounds, but that means it's not hitting the Shaggoth, and that's definitely some rough stuff. The Shaggoth will struggle to hit it because it just has such monstrous melee defense. In the meantime, on the flanks, you can see I pull Kholek away, trying to keep him alive, and I'm going to cycle charge into my opponent's rear. These Necropolis Knights, with their pitiful melee, or with their pitiful charge stacked on top of not so good melee attack, are going to struggle against the Chosen. Obviously, they'll poison them, and they'll be a nuisance, but the Chosen will hold. Their leadership is still sitting at 37 because they're not... Obviously, Tomb Guard is a joke against them, and the Necropolis Knights here are going to actually start suffering pretty badly. And this is just from fighting these. You can see how they overextended here into the midst of these Chosen. They're getting slaughtered. Those halberds poking and prodding them down. So definitely some rough stuff for my opponent. While over here, Kholek does come back from the flank to go after the Cetra and the Necrosphinx, which the Necrosphinx is almost gone. It goes down there, it crumbles, and that leaves only that only leaves Cetra, as Kholek does turn around to go help. Over here you can see the Chaos Sorcerer Shadow is coming back, but I make a big mistake here, not noticing my opponent's that my opponent's noticed my Sorcerer, and he's going to dive in with his Necropolis Knights and catch this poor guy, and he's going to be in a rough spot. He's obviously does not have the stats to go toe-to-toe. This is definitely one of those situations where these guys will be excellent, and they really beat the snot out of him. In the front line, though, things are definitely much more grim. Cetra has had his face pounded in. This unit of Necropolis Knights going up toe-to-toe against two Shaggoths, and Kholek is, well, a disaster. The Spearmen can't really hurt the Shaggoths very reliably at all. And the Necropolis Knights are too few in number, and they're crumbling, and they're in incredibly bad shape. Over here, the Hounds do rally. Chosen with halberds still holding their own, and of course with no more rear threat, they're just completely fine and dandy with fighting. Over here you can see, of course, the Necropolis Knights with halberds just getting pounded in, down to 9 models, crumbling, losing another model there, 6 models, so definitely some rough stuff. Cetra's trying to come back in to help. You can see these Necropolis Knights with halberds, if you look at them, they're sitting at 14 models. You can see the resetting AI, but I do call in a Lord of the Storm trying to deal with them, and it actually hits them there and does quite a bit of damage. They lose 4 models. I think that was all from one Lord of the Storm. You can see Poison Hounds jumping in to interfere. Kholek still has a 1600 HP, so even if Cetra does dive in here, he's going to struggle. He does. You can see Kholek's taking some damage, but in return, Cetra's going to get smushed. One of the problems with Nehru's Incantation of Desiccation is that it doesn't affect, say, Oakham's Miners. You can see I hit him with the Enfeebling Foe, dropping his stats down to basically nil, which is going to be good night to Cetra. And without further ado, we're basically just going to fast forward through. You can see the shop tier, the last thing left there. You hit the Tomb Guard with the Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma and get a finish. So once again, a very similar strat to the previous one. In many ways, the strategy is even the whole concept of this engagement is very similar to the... In many ways, it's very similar to the concept of the vampire counts. You beat the big stuff, and you are guaranteed to win, basically. The Chosen will win the infantry fight. To win the infantry fight, your opponent would have to bring a horde of... I don't even know what. Your opponent would have to, honestly... I don't think... There would have to be a huge expenditure into, like, Tomb Guard and Tomb Guard with halberds to tear through even 3 units of Chosen. It would be very inefficient, and you could get massive value out of Normal Pendulums if your opponent did that. I see the Dragon Ogre Shaggoths there. Both gained 3 chevrons just because they were fighting so many units. Definitely showing their power. Personally, I'm expecting the Sphinx of Usef to get a nerf to its stats, because currently its stats are rather ludicrous. They're very, very high by all sort of standards. Similarly, I expect the Necrosphinx to get nerfed, because one of those things, I think, currently I'm pretty sure the Necrosphinx outduels a Shaggoth, despite being the same cost, and the Necrosphinx of Usef can even beat Kholek, despite being cheaper, well, I suppose it might be a tiny bit more expensive than a Kholek if he's stripped down all the way, but its stats are much better than his. So I think what we're going to see is we'll see some nerfs to these. But regardless, right now, if you bring in 2 Shaggoths and you bring Kholek, you've got a pretty good chance of womping on these big units. And if your opponent can't deal with your infantry, you're basically set. You just have to be wary of shooting. So if your opponent brings, say, Shabti Great Bows or skeleton archers, you need to have the tools to quickly shut or try to shut them down. Just plow through, get on top of them with Kholek and the Dragon of Shaggoths. Personally, that's one of the big problems with this build, I think, is that if your opponent, say, brought a bunch of skeleton archers, you could actually struggle. If your opponent brought, say, the Legion of Demonetization and then, say, 3 or 4 skeleton archers, this build can't really shut that down, and that would be a problem. But otherwise, I don't think there's much your opponent can do with Tomb Kings, and I think maybe I'll start look into some alternative sort of build types. Try to get some Forsaken in here, just monster mash the backline. But either way, I think this is pretty solid. So I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do hope you found it kind of entertaining and informative about this matchup. Great game to my opponent, Proud Orc Shaman here. Was a lot of fun. And yeah, I do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticism, if you'd like to ask anything like that, be sure to ask, and in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.